Hi, this is Dr. John Bergduff. In this video, I'm going to show you one method for creating a tessellating pattern. There are many ways to create tessellating patterns, and generally they fall into one of two categories. They involve using a translation approach or a rotation approach. And this one is a rotation approach. It's not the only way that tessellations are created with sort of a rotation approach, but this is one way, and I'd like to show you. So for this method to work, you simply need to start with one of three geometric figures, either a quadrilateral, a triangle, or a hexagon. Now, this one right here, as you can see, is a quadrilateral, and there's nothing particularly remarkable about this. It appears to be a parallelogram, but not all sides are parallel. It's not a rectangle. It can truly be any quadrilateral. Anything that works will work at all. Same for the other two shapes. Here's how it works. So what you do is you take your quadrilateral and you make some alterations in each side. What you want to do, let's pick a side. Let's pick the right side here. You want to look at the vertices of that side, and then you want to figure out what is the midpoint of that side. So as carefully as I can, I am going to try to locate where the midpoint of that would be. And to me, that looks like, oh, it would be right about here. You're going to see we'll take some liberties, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a design, and basically anything I want that connects one vertex to the midpoint on this side. It can truly be anything I want. It can be something that goes inside the rectangle or inside the quadrilateral, sorry, and back out. Just to kind of keep it sort of simple, I'm going to just draw sort of a little simple drawing that just goes outside. And the key thing is it has to join one vertex with the midpoint. So I create a little triangle doodad like that. Now, what you do then is you do your very best to create basically a rotated version of this in the other half of the line segment joining from the midpoint to the other vertex. What do I mean by that? Well, notice that this triangle comes out and goes in and hits the midpoint with a horizontal line. Let's draw a line segment that goes the same distance in that the other half goes out like that inside the quadrilateral, and then join that to the opposite endpoint. And hopefully what it would look like is if you could take this little bit right here formed by what I drew in orange and the original side of that rectangle and rotate it around that point, it would look like this little bit over here. This triangle would kind of rotate into that one. That's kind of the idea. You can do that with every side. So I'm going to pick the bottom. And again, I'm going to locate as best I can where I think the middle of that, the midpoint of that side is, maybe like that. And this time I think I'll draw something that's more curvy, just, you know, because. So I'm going to have a piece that goes like this. Again, what I'm doing is I'm joining the endpoint to the midpoint. And again, you can make this very fancy, but what you want to be prepared to do is you want to make it look like the drawing you create from the midpoint to the other vertex looks just like this one, just rotated around that center point. So I drew something fairly simple that came outside the rectangle, the quadrilateral, sorry, and is going to go inside and doing the very best I can to make it look identical. This is not perfect, but guess what? You can use some artistic license and kind of fudge things a little when you actually create this. Let's pick the other side. Let's pick this side. And again, I'm kind of measuring because I want to be as careful as I can. And I think the midpoint looks like it's right about there. And maybe a slightly different design. I think maybe now that you're getting the hang of it, you could see, for example, that if I drew a line segment that went like that and went the same distance in like that, and then joined to the endpoints, that would create a figure that would have that sense of a rotation. Imagine again that you're cutting out that little triangle that I just created right here. And if I rotated it around that point, it looks like it would match this triangle here. So remember, go to the midpoint of a side, draw whatever you want that joins an endpoint to the midpoint. And then the trickier part is you want to create sort of a rotated image of that from that endpoint to the other vertex. And there's nothing that says, by the way, that you have to do this on all 4 sides or 3 sides if it was a triangle, or 6 if it was a hexagon. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, say, I think I'll leave this side the way it is. Now, what you want to now do is you want to cut this out with scissors. Just cut around the line, the borders that you have created. This, by the way, is a lot easier to do if the paper you use is somewhat stiff, not just regular paper, but maybe cardstock or construction paper or something like that. And this is going to be a little bit like in the cooking shows where rather than watching me cut this out, I'm going to say, we're going to put it in the oven at 350 degrees. And in 20 minutes, we're going to pull it out. And lo and behold, here is the shape, again, cut out. So isn't that cool? And somehow magically, the cardstock changed from white to green. Now, let's see what this does. Here's a blank sheet of paper. And what I'm going to do to illustrate this is I am simply going to take this little template I've created from my little drawing. I'm going to trace around it, hold it still and trace around it like that. Again, just trying to be as careful as I can. And let's get the curvy side. And there we go. Take it out of the way. So there's a copy of that shape. It's now getting hard to see what the original quadrilateral looked like. It's kind of been disguised in the shape. Now here's what you do. Putting the template back over the shape that I drew. I am going to pick a side, maybe this one, and kind of looking at the point where that midpoint used to be. You can kind of see that little piece of the original quadrilateral right there, rotating that way. Take that and simply rotate it around. And what should happen is that the piece will fit into the drawing you've already got, close to perfectly. And then you can trace around it again. And again, if you're super accurate, there will be no errors in this whatsoever, but you can use a little bit of artistic license if something doesn't quite fit 100%, like it's going to happen right there in that corner, not a perfect match. We're just going to fix that by just drawing that a little bit more completely. And oops, I forgot a piece. Let me get that last little slide right there. Again, lining it up as closely as I can. And there's another piece. Now, continue to rotate. If I take this and rotate around the bottom to where the 2 flat pieces will line up. Again, just trying to get that to line up perfectly, or nearly perfectly. Should never say perfect. This traces around like this. And I'm tracing it as best I can. And kind of back to that meeting point right there. This will be the moment of truth, because it should be that when I rotate this one more time, it should fit. Ah, there, right in with the others. And I can definitely see how this is forming a tessellation, a covering of the plane, a regular tessellation, in fact, because I'm covering it with one geometric figure only. And I can continue on and on and on, pick any side, rotate around that side until it matches up. Maybe I'll do 2 more copies and then I'll be happy. It goes like this and like this, like this. And hopefully, as you can see, this is forming a tessellation of the plane. Here comes the round side again. And you can totally play with these figures until you get a style that you like. Maybe one more. Take this, rotate around the right side, and you can see that it fits again. If you see any slight imperfection in that matchup, it's all right. I think it looks pretty good to me, but you certainly can just sort of fix it as you go, because although this is mathematics, it's also art. There you go. I think that's showing the tessellation pretty nicely, and you can keep going. Again, this process can be done using either a quadrilateral, a triangle, or a hexagon. Hexagons are certainly the more complicated. And you may have noticed that I had another design that, as my paper slid around a little bit, I just wanted to show you, here's one where I started with a triangle, and then I created more of these shapes on each side where I joined the end point to the midpoint, and whatever shape I drew between the midpoint and the end point and the midpoint, I made it look like if you took that and rotated it around, you would get the shape that goes from that midpoint to the other endpoint. So this goes out, this comes in, this goes out, this comes in. Just to make things a little bit different, on this side, I sort of just followed along the natural edge of that triangle. And then at the last minute, just drew one little notch in and a symmetric notch out. So same kind of idea. And again, you get your scissors and you cut that out and create a template that matches. And then you get a new piece of paper. And let's see how well this does. So again, we'll start with just making one trace of this template. Like this. Hope I'm remembering to get all sides. I hope so. That goes like that. And then finally around here, like that. Great. Now, pick any side. Here you can kind of see the remains of the original triangle. Rotate it around that midpoint. And you will see that it will come along and fit in to itself like that. And you can trace it again. And it fits in just like that. Rotate, let's go back to the original and look at rotating across the bottom. This will rotate around and you can just kind of move it as it goes. You will see that it will fit into itself like that and create a new pattern down here. Oh, that just moves slightly. That's okay, we're not gonna worry about it too much. Comes down here. And like that, voila. And maybe one more rotation to create a piece that goes over here. This rotates like that. The two bits come together here, fit in nicely like point to point up on the top. And you do this one more time. And maybe I'll just show with the template what a couple more would look like, and we'll be happy with 4 copies. There we go. But take a look at this. If I rotate over here to the right, it will fit in like that. Rotate it back up to the top. It will fit in like that. And so on and so forth and so on until you get the entire page covered with identical figures. Now, as you create these, as you practice and try different shapes and so forth, you might begin to see some cool shapes developing. To me, these kind of look like ghosts. So I'm going to put little faces on them. Some of them are vertical, or excuse me, some of them are right side up and some of them are upside down. But this is a tessellation of the plane with ghosts. So that's the rotation method, or a rotation method. There are others, but this is certainly one way to create some nice tessellations. And I hope that you enjoyed it.